range, but who has, so they've been down at the bottom of the wait list range, but their personal statement has been so outstanding and really spoke to the committee that the committee may make them an offer right from that point. So what I'm saying is you can bypass everybody else who's on that waiting list, who's on that wait list range, and be made an offer. Or it could have an impact where we decide that actually, or the committee decides that actually we really like this applicant, not enough to make an offer, but maybe we're going to bump you up to the mid-range of the wait list. Or if you're really lucky, they're going to say, we really, really like this person, but not quite enough to make an offer, but we're going to bump them to the top of the wait list range. So your personal statement makes a significant difference in your overall application, and you have to be strategic when you are completing your overall application. So when you are doing your personal statement, you have two parts. You have part A, where you're going to tell us why law, why UVic Law, and how UVic Law is a good fit for you. Part B is where you're going to use bullet points to tell us a little bit more about yourselves. And I just realized I have a tendency to talk a lot, and I can just go on and go. So actually what I want to do is I want to flip it back to you, because before I continue a little any further, I'd actually like to hear from you. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm hoping that you can either write it in the chat and Emma can read it out for us, or you can unmute yourself and just let's have a conversation. So my question to you is, why law?
Okay, we have one hand raised, and I am unmuting you. Go right ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Did you want me to have my video on, or just my audio is good enough?
It's completely up to you.
Okay. So my reason for UVic Law, or rather my reason for law, actually has two parts. It first of all has a lot to do with my background, my cultural background from Nigeria, where I had grown up in a system where I saw that the law was a lot of the policies and the basis of the law that we were, should I say, I grew up in, were very unfair and really inhumane. And because of that, it had kind of like really raised this sort of, I had this negative feelings towards lawyers and just the law in general, where we always had these feelings of the law was never on the side of the people and never actually catered to their needs. But I would say that one thing that really changed that for me was ever since I had really started working on a path towards medicine, I volunteered in the hospitals a lot. And in volunteering in the hospitals a lot, I saw the impact that policies and health laws really had on the lives of people, both especially marginalized populations like Indigenous people and Black people who looked like me. And I realized that I was more invested in that aspect of healthcare versus the medicine portion of it. And I chose to pursue a field in law because I really wanted a sort of education that was really going to give me a competitive advantage when it came to how I wanted to work in policy, public health policy. And if I got more of an exposure to the legal field, I could have an interest in pursuing more of maybe litigation work or something that had to do with really being able to evaluate cases and really work towards, I would say, fighting for, I don't want to use the word justice because sometimes I feel like that could also have a bit of its own loaded answer, but I would say fighting fairly for people. But I'm strongly affiliated towards public policy health work when it comes to my affiliation or my reason for choosing law.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing. That's awesome. Anybody else? What brought you to this webinar this evening?
We have Tabitha. So please go ahead.
Hi, Lori. Hi, Emma. Hi, everyone here. What brought me to this webinar this evening was, of course, my love for law. So I'm a mature person. I am 46 years young, and I've actually been, I've always wanted to be a lawyer since I was young. And my father wanted me to be a wife. So I took that path, and it didn't work out too well because I really wanted to be a professional. So I found myself in the pharmaceutical field, and I'm a director of regulatory affairs and compliance. So I kind of practice law, without being a lawyer per se. I practice certain functions of law, more like administrative law, but I keep on coming back to wanting to be a lawyer. So now my kids are older, and I'm really going to try and pursue law, the dream that I originally had when I was younger.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. That's exciting.
Thanks, Tabitha. We have Jaden up next.
So I think for me, like I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was in middle school, and I just finished my undergrad, but it was more because my dad, he's an RCMP officer, and I knew like his job fascinated me, but I was like, I don't know if I could go through that training, and I've seen how it's kind of ruined him a little bit, but I just found like just going to work with him sometimes, I'm like, the law, it's just so fascinating to me. Like it's super interesting, and I love learning like how and why these laws are created, and like how they're like constantly changing. And it's just something that's like I talked to a lawyer a little bit ago. He's like, it's something that never gets boring. Like it's always on your toes and stuff. And so I'm also here just because I want to learn more information on like the application process, and just I'm definitely open to all the information to get some help with all of this.
Thank you. That's awesome. Anybody else? No? Okay, I'm going to, so here's my best, one of my best tips for your personal statement. 3 words when you're writing your personal statement: authenticity, vulnerability, and strategic. So the authenticity piece is, we want to know about you. That's why I asked that question. If you actually haven't really thought about it, you really need to think about it, because just telling us that you want to come in to help people, to save the world, to make a change, while all those are really, really good things, and I'm not dismissing them by any stretch, it's not enough. We actually really want to know about you, and we're very interested in why you are interested in law. We are passionate about law. We're passionate about the changes, the really positive changes that law can make locally, nationally, and globally. We want to see that passion reflected in your personal statement. We accept 110 students into our class every year. This past year, I had 1,400 applications for 110 seats. So when I'm talking authenticity, I really want to see the real you. Share with me and with the committee a little bit about who you are and why law is important to you. Not necessarily a career in law. Not everybody is coming to law to pursue a career in law or become a lawyer. Some people are coming to just get a better understanding of the law and add tools to an already existing toolbox. So what is your path, or what has been your path to law school? So my next question that I'm going to put out to you is, why UVic Law? And I'll preface this by saying, in Canada, any law school that you go to, you're going to get an exceptional legal education. We are really, really fortunate in that. So why UVic Law? Why is UVic Law your choice? I mean, it could be because we're awesome. We know that. But.
All right, I will unmute you.
Hi again. UVic Law, I think, one of the reasons why I think UVic Law for me at least is my first choice is because I had personally attended a Black Future Lawyer conference with University of Toronto, I think sometime in the summer. And it was such an important experience because it was the first time I think I had seen so many Black people in the professional field and such occupying so much space in one place at the same time. And it was so empowering, it was a whole lot of great things. But then when I looked into, I think, their faculty directory, I realized that there was also a very interesting difference in just the diverse range of professors that they carried that taught the different aspects of law. And when I looked at UVic Law, I found that one of the professors who I think inspired even my decision to pursue law is, first off, from the same country that I am, but also she pursued it in such a passionate way and really worked on this thing called the Black Mentorship Program Initiative. And I think that was the first time where I felt like a university was really catering to actually allow me to feel like I belong. Because I think one of the conversations I had with her initially was one of my biggest questions when I was going into any legal space was very much, do I feel like I really belong here? Is my voice, do they really want to hear what I have to say, or my worldview or my contributions? And I felt like when UVic Law first off released their the first Indigenous law program in the world, I felt like those were really bold and authentic strides that they were making internationally too, that really gave me that feeling of, this is a school where I want to learn from. These are values that I think I want to carry on in my legal profession, because I do have intentions to really take these further on a global level. And I felt like UVic Law just fit all of those categories beautifully because of how they did it, when they did it, and I think in the ways they did it, because they were just unapologetically bold about the fact that they were supporting these groups and marginalized populations. And I really appreciated that.
Wow, thank you so much. I don't know, Rebecca, Natalie, and Rebecca, do you want to say anything to that?
I think, sorry, I'm just going to jump in first and say that Lori is going to be at a virtual panel event in October that you might be interested in. It's through the University of Toronto, and it's called Black Future Lawyers, and it's a panel around that. I'm going to post the link into the chat, so if that's something that anyone's interested in attending, please take a look.
Hi, how do I pronounce your name, the girl who's just speaking?
It's pronounced as Daisy Jesu, but you can call me Daisy if that's too difficult.
Thank you for pronouncing it. Those are great reasons. I think it's really important to figure out what will be important to you and how you will best learn at a school. And definitely the faculty is a part of that. I think it's also important to consider the demographic of the class makeup. So if you're looking at schools that may do post that information, that is also a really important thing to consider.
Yeah, I'll just step in for a second here. Going back to something Lori said earlier, every law school in Canada, no matter where you choose to go, you'll get a fantastic education. But I think something I've noticed in my 3 years here is that UVic Law does take diversity, inclusion, and social justice seriously, relatively speaking. And yeah, just going back to what Rebecca and Lori have been saying, I, as someone who immigrated here to Canada when I was 7 years old and didn't have any lawyers in the family, grew up solidly middle class, and I didn't really see someone of my background really practicing in the industry or really making a difference in the legal industry. And here at UVic, for example, this semester, one of my professors is also a brown man and is just a leader in refugee law, and I'm learning from him, and he's a great resource and someone I can look up and aspire to. And I think that UVic does take that diversity seriously, not just within the professors, as you've seen from your research, but like Rebecca said, also among the student body.
Well, I'll jump in. I have another reason for choosing UVic. So for me, one of the reasons is location. I am from Ontario, and I've always wanted to live on the West Coast. I'm actually from Toronto, and I love nature, but Ontario, it's really difficult to get a cottage here. It's outrageous. Like I can't, it's crazy, but the nature out on the West Coast is so beautiful. I've visited before, and I absolutely love it. So as you can see, my little tree behind me, I long to be, I long to be on the West Coast. So that's why I kind of want to come to UVic. And then back to the point of the Indigenous law program. So learning more about Indigenous law and being on the West Coast, I think it's really important to learn about Indigenous law, Indigenous rights, because that is a huge makeup of British Columbia. So that is another reason for me wanting to go to UVic.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to share? No? Okay. It's so why UVic is a very important piece as well, because again, we're interested. Here, I will tell you, please don't just go on our website and sort of cut and paste or regurgitate what we have on the website. And I don't say that. I guess I'm sounding a little dismissive of that. It's not my intention to be, but we wrote that. We know about that. What we really want to know again is, why do you want to come to UVic Law? Why is it a good fit for you, for your legal education, and for your long-term career goals? And then the third piece of your personal statement is, how are you a good fit for UVic Law? And how is UVic Law a good fit for you? So really think about it like, what added value are you bringing to the community that we are trying to build at UVic Law and to the classroom environment? So when I am out recruiting and when I'm looking at the admissions committee and I are reviewing applications, our goal for that first year class that enters the Fraser Building in September every year is to admit the broadest representation of Canadian society as we possibly can. So I don't use diversity anymore, because to me that just feels like I'm ticking a box when I say diversity. Plus, it doesn't really, as far as I'm concerned, reflect the breadth of representation I'm looking for. So I'm looking for socioeconomic status, LGBTQ, people with disabilities, Indigenous, people of color, Black. I'm looking for people with mental health. I'm looking for people, single parents. I'm looking for mature. I'm looking at veterans. We are looking for, again, the broadest representation of Canadian families and societies that we can have, because the goal of UVic Law is to admit those students so that we can get you through and get you into the legal profession, so that you can work towards changing the Canadian judiciary to be more reflective of Canadian society, because that is the only way that we are going to increase faith in the Canadian judiciary and make positive changes within our own communities, nationally and globally. So again, what added value are you bringing? Now, when I say added value, I'll use it like I'll say, think of it like an interview. When you go to an interview, you walk in and the interview panel sitting there in front of you, and you've been invited because they know that you meet the minimum requirements to do you meet the minimum qualifications to do the job. What they're now looking at is, how are you dressed? How are you presenting yourself? What are you bringing forward? How do you speak? How do you engage in a situation that's rather nerve-wracking? What added value are you going to bring that's going to add additional value to the organization? That is your application to UVic Law. It's you presenting yourself to a panel of people who are looking for those exact same things. So that's a big ask in 750 words. Right? In part A, that's a lot to try and express in 750 words. So this is where the strategic piece comes in part B. Biggest mistake I've seen people do is not include a Part B. Do not make that mistake, because it will kill your application. It's like I read every application that comes into UVic Law, and I've read some really amazing Part A of the personal statement. And I'll be like, oh my God, this is somebody amazing. I'm gonna, I'm looking forward to seeing what else they're doing. And then I'll go and there's no Part B. It's like reading a murder mystery, and you get to the last chapter and you're gonna find out who the killer is, and there's no chapter. Last chapter is gone. So don't make the mistake of dismissing Part B. So Part B is where you're going to tell us in bullet points more about yourself. So let me give you an example. Let's see, again, tell me fun fact. Tell me something fun fact about each of you. I'll tell you something about me. My favorite fruit is mango. And I'm not just doing this just because I have nothing else to talk about. I actually do have a point with this. So
I just adopted a little cat.
oh,
Mm,
nice.
yeah, his name's Ozzy. So I got him from the Cat Rescue. So
Oh, beautiful.
sweetheart.
Oh, Emma's got an adopted cat. Anybody else?
I would say one thing that I consider a fun fact is that I can read, speak, and write in Korean.
Wow, that's awesome. Oh, fabulous. I always wanted to learn ASL. I never did it though, but that's awesome. Anybody else? Oh, good on you. One of the Rebeccas, fun fact that I don't know.
Like everyone else, I hopped on the sourdough train during the pandemic. And
Oh,
I'm into baking bread.
that's awesome. I don't have that excuse for my pandemic fudge, but mine was alcohol.
Pandemic is in itself is a good excuse.
Okay, so the reason, okay, so I won't put anybody else on the spot. The reason that I bring that up is, again, it just gives you an idea. I have a little, for everybody who shared, I have a little bit more insight into who you are, right? So those of you that have other languages, wow, good on you, because that is, especially if English is your first language, learning another one, if you're anything like me, that's an accomplishment. Adopting a cat, that tells me things about you as an individual that I can then apply to your overall application. So in Part B, it's not just about, I do recommend that you list your educational background, your work experience, any extracurriculars that you may have been involved in, some fun facts about you, whatever you want to share with us that will give the committee some more insight into you as a person, into the real you, not who you think we want to see, but the real you. So I've actually seen people do really effective things. I saw one person who actually wrote about being a new parent and then put two sentences underneath talking about what they have learned from being a new parent and how that aligned with why law. I've seen people who have done extensive traveling and again have put just a couple of sentences underneath there talking about why that again aligns with why law. So it always comes back to what you're telling us in Part A. So another example is if you're really interested in environmental law, and your Part A is talking a lot about your interest in environmental law, sustainability, etc., then perhaps in Part B, maybe your educational background has something to do with environmental issues. Or maybe you're volunteering, or maybe you've written a research paper, or who knows, maybe you've done something. So you want to list it there as well. So it's an opportunity for you to really give us some insight into you and how you would be a good fit with UVic Law. And also, it gives us some insight into characteristics and skill sets that you might not have listed in Part A. So an example of that is I had somebody who applied and was not admitted, and then we went over the application shortly thereafter. And one of the things that this individual had not included was they'd only included their most recent work experience. And I said, well, you know, I know how old you are, so what have you done, you know, before that? Oh, well, you know, I worked at McDonald's when I was in high school and I did this and I did that, but I didn't think that that was important. I really thought I should just focus on, you know, the big positions that I've had. And I said, you know what, working at McDonald's, I can pull a whole lot of skill sets that are applicable to law and learning the law from that, just that knowledge. So don't undermine yourself by second guessing what should and should not be included in your personal statement. Okay, so it really, we are looking for your strengths. We're looking for areas that perhaps you need to be building on a little bit more, but always be strategic and pull it back into Part A, why law, why UVic Law, and how you're a good fit for UVic Law and how UVic's a good fit for you. And then I'll just end by saying, think of it, I'm a visual learner, so I always say to people, think about it like you're building a garden path. So you lay the foundation, then you're going to put your stones down, and then you're going to fill in the spaces between the stones, either with smaller stones or sand. And that's where you're going to make sure that in that personal statement, you address anything that could potentially cause the committee to have a question about your application. You want to be proactive and do not leave the committee questioning anything in your personal statement. You have to remember that the members of this committee are all lawyers or learning to be new lawyers. So they're going to be looking at every little detail. And if there's anything in there that raises a flag or raises any type of concern, you want to make sure that you've addressed it. So an example of that is if at any time you have not completed full-time studies. So maybe you did 5 courses per term in your first 2 years, and then you dropped down to 2 courses per year each term. And then you went back to full-time. You need to tell the committee what happened in that year where you went to part-time studies. Okay, so that's the rocks, you know, that's the rocks between the larger stones. And then once it's done, that's the point where you're going to be ready to hit that submit button. And that's the point where your personal statement, your application, your overall application, it's the best of you at that point in time. So when you hit submit, you're saying to us that you're inviting us to walk with you along that path so we can see your journey to our doorstep. So again, what brought you, why law, why UVic Law, and how are you a good fit for UVic Law, and how is UVic Law a good fit for you? Okay, so I'm now going to I'm going to open it up to questions. We're here for any questions that you might have.
Do you have a scholarships page?
We do not have a scholarships page. I'm working on it, but we do have a lot of entrance scholarships. And thank you for bringing that up, because if you are offered a seat at UVic Law and you accept that seat, I will be using your personal statement to try and match you to donor terms of references for entrance scholarships. So if any of you are a rugby player, please make sure that you identify that in your personal statement, because every year I go on a quest for a rugby player. So yes, we do have quite extensive entrance scholarships. And then in-course scholarships once you are an upper level student. Thank you, Rebecca.
We have a hand raised from Chamindra.
Hello, good evening to you. So my name is Chamindra and I am from Sri Lanka. And at the minute, I am based in Victoria. It was a bit of an accidental situation. I came here for a fellowship at the chair in transgender studies at UVic, and I got stranded here because of the COVID last year. So I've been here for a while. And I currently work as the senior consultant to the Gender Identity and Expression and Sex Characteristics program at ILGA World, the International Lesbian, Gay, Trans and Intersex Association in Geneva. And my work involves a great deal of advocacy with United Nations bodies, treaty bodies, universal periodic review processes, and so on. And my discipline is international politics. So I have a PhD in comparative politics from Queen's University, Belfast in Northern Ireland. And my previous undergrad and postgrad degrees are from the French public university system. And one of the reasons I came to this event today is I have always been interested in the legal profession. And however, I never got around to obtaining a legal qualification, getting to law school. Because of other obligations and so on. And the more I engage in my current body of work in the professional sphere, I find myself increasingly interested in your Juris Indigenarum program.
Mm.
And because when you're here, it's a different ballgame here on the West Coast. But in my case, very soon, when international travel is increasingly possible, I'll be in a different part of the world, and it does take a while to get here. But still, when I looked at the law programs, the bilingual programs at McGill and Université d'Ottawa and many other places in the leading universities of this country, the Juris Indigenarum really stands out. Mm-hmm. And when we think in terms of major challenges, facing especially people of diverse SOGIESC, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, sex characteristics, and so on, when you think in terms of what's going on in the Pacific Islands or the Oceania region and many other parts of the world, that program seems to be a very unique program. And one question I wanted to ask you was, for a program of that nature, is it a place where you would welcome mature students? And what about the competitivity, of that program? If you wouldn't mind saying a few words, thank you.
Yeah, wow. I'm kind of like, whoa, that's wow. I know I said that 3 times now. The JD-JID, yeah, I'm going to actually ask Rebecca to speak to that, because they are actually enrolled in the program right now. But I would say, to answer your question, absolutely, we would welcome a mature applicant into that program. It's a 4-year program. You do graduate with 2 degrees. I would actually invite you, Emma, if you would put my email address in the chat box. I would invite you to email me, and I'm going to connect you. We did 2 videos back right before COVID hit at the First People's House, and John Burrows speaks to the creation of the JD-JID program, and then Sarah Morales actually does an example of how she teaches transsystemically. And then the second video is myself and my colleague Ruth Young, who's the Director of Indigenous Initiatives at UVic Law, talk about admissions to the program. And we also have current students who speak about their journey to the JD-JID program. So I can send you all of that information. Just send me an email, and then we can connect and have a little bit more information, I can talk to you a little bit more about that. As well, we are doing a JD-JID webinar, I think on October 19th, that's on the UVic Law website. And Val Napoleon, who's the director of that program, will be present to be speaking to it. So again, I think that would be a phenomenal opportunity for you to learn more about the JDJ. But Rebecca, do you guys want to say anything?
Sure, I can jump in. So I was actually on the JID Commission committee last year for the admissions committee. And so I got to look at all of the applications. And so the committee kind of works a bit differently from the regular and discretionary committees in that we look at all of the applicants kind of together. We actually do, I think in most of the years, out of the 4 years that we currently have several mature students. And we also have students with children as well in the program. And so accommodations are made based on class schedules, et cetera, and obligations. But it's definitely an asset, I think, to have lots of experience, whatever that may be. And in terms of what the program offers, generally the focus of the program is more on Indigenous legal orders related to these lands, so the lands of Turtle Island, now known as Canada, for many people. And so there are many of our colleagues who come from other places and are Indigenous to other places. And so they kind of infuse their legal work from that lens. But in terms of the curriculum itself, in first year, many of the transdemic courses are related to Anishinaabe legal orders, Gitxsan legal orders, and Cree legal orders. So that's kind of where that foundation is. Rebecca, do you have anything you want to add?
I would just add, and this is true for like the JT applications as well. You have to, again, just explain like why you want to be in that program. And one thing I know that is super important is that you are able to show that you have some kind of connection to Indigenous community. So whatever that may be, and just like showing that you are connected somehow as opposed to just having like a general interest, if that makes sense.
I think next we're going to go to Jaden and then a Daisy Jasko and Josh. So we'll start with Jaden for the next question.
I was just wondering, in regards to like the GPAs, I know some schools like they only look at like 3 years of university experience rather than the full 4. Does UVic do the same? Like, do they pardon any grades, or is that like they look at it all, or just kind of wondering around that?
Yes, so I use a sliding scale. So depending on the number of units or credits that you've completed, I will what I call discount some of your lower grades in order to give that GPA as much of a boost. Yeah, we do use your whole undergraduate, or you can apply upon completion of 45 units for 90 credits, which is basically 3 years. So depending upon where you're at the point of time you apply, I will calculate all of those. And again, like I say, using a sliding scale, discount some of your lower grades.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, a Daisy Jaso.
Hi, my question has more to do with the, should I say discretionary category? I wanted to know if, what exactly it is, because when I was looking at that, I realized that they wanted some sort of explanation to say why there might be, like you said, a gap maybe in your academic record, or a gap in, I think, your LSAT score that may not necessarily reflect your, should I say, full ability or something like that. And I just wanted a little bit more clarification on how differently a discretionary categories of application is going to be from a general category of applicant, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, so quickly, the JD regular, so I look at your LSAT, your GPA, and then your personal statement. With the discretionary category, one thing you have to be aware of is we have limited seats for discretionary applicants. So it is a very, very, like all of the categories and both programs, it is a very competitive category to apply within. It is in that discretionary category, same thing. I'm going to calculate your LSAT and your GPA and come up with an index score, just like with the regular category. We're going to be looking for your personal statement, exactly like we've discussed here today. In addition to that, though, you are going to have to submit a discretionary statement where you speak to us as to why you're applying within this category, and how the reasons that you're applying within this category have impacted your ability to obtain a competitive GPA and or LSAT score. Generally, we also ask for supporting documentation where available to support why you're applying within this category. And then you're also going to be asked to submit 2 references, one an academic reference and one a character reference. So it can be character or employment reference. One tip that I'll give you, and then I'm going to pass it over to Navani, who was the student on the discretionary committee. One tip on the references that I will give you is that please do not, and I speak from personal because this just happened to me the other day, don't just send somebody an email and say, hey, I'm applying to UVic Law. Would you be a reference for me? You know, that's just not a way to approach somebody who's really busy and perhaps maybe writing lots of these anyways. But besides that fact, you're not going to get necessarily the type of reference that you want that's going to provide you with an overall strong application. My recommendation is you reach out to that person and say, hey, can I meet you for a walk? Can I meet you for coffee? I'm applying to UVic Law. I'm applying within the discretionary category or the Indigenous category or the JD program. I really need a really strong academic reference or character reference. I'd really like to talk to you about this. And then go and be prepared to really have an open conversation with that individual. This is what I'm looking for in an academic reference. I really need you to identify that, I was a strong student. I was perhaps the top 5, 10, 15% of the class. Do you remember that paper that I wrote that you thought was absolutely outstanding? Can you speak to that? Perhaps my leadership, my attendance, so we're looking for more than, sorry, Emma, I'm going to use you. Emma Edmonds has applied to UVic Law. She's a really super nice person, and she was in my philosophy 410 class. She attended every day, and I think she'd be a great addition to your law school. He's not going to get you anywhere. Okay, that gives us no insight whatsoever into your ability to be successful at law school. So in the discretionary category, we're not going to be able to look at your ability to be successful the same way we are as applicants in the regular category. So that's why we ask for this additional documentation. You need to be able to provide us with evidence of your ability to be successful in law school. So that's all I'm going to say about the discretionary right now, because we are doing a discretionary webinar. I can't remember when it's scheduled right now, but it is on our UVic Law admissions webpage. But Navani, do you want to say anything about the discretionary?
Sure, yeah. Lori did a great job there to kind of summarizing what we're looking for. But one thing I do want to emphasize is that connection. Of course, I was part of the subcommittee, and it was the first thing that I looked for in every application. Just what is this person's reason for applying discretionary? The most common reason was medical, but there's also social factors, economic factors, family obligations. And what was that nexus, we call it, between the reason why you're applying discretionary and either your LSAT or GPA or both? And it's very important for a discretionary committee. And like Lori said, the reference letters are quite helpful for us because, of course, we want to get as holistic of a sense of this person as possible. When I'm reading an application, I like to subconsciously just visualize who this person is and what this person would be like if I were to have a face-to-face conversation with them. And the reference letters do help in that regard. I remember reading reference letters that were great reference letters and would have been incredible if you were applying to a job. But if they don't really speak to that connection, then it's not as helpful for this specific category. And so that's what we're really looking for. That connection is quite important. It's why you can also write a separate discretionary statement in addition to your personal statement. And that should really be the focus, if you can make it that.
Thank you. That was awesome.
I think we'll jump into Josh's question, and after Josh, there's a few questions in the chat that I'm hoping you can address, Lori, and then we'll move on to Tabitha. And I'm not trying to rush, but I just want to be mindful that everybody has questions. And if there's something that you're feeling like you're not quite understanding, or you want to talk about your own specific story, then just give us an email and we can set up a conversation. So yeah. Okay, so Josh, and then we'll go into the chat after that.
Yeah, thanks. So it's a bit of a change of topic. I was just for the part B on the personal statement, just because it's a bit unique in terms of like the personal statements I'm seeing at law schools. So it's like a bullet point thing. Are you expecting maybe like a few sentences for like each bullet point, or is it supposed to be like a longer thing? I was just kind of a bit, I don't know, it's just a bit unclear on like how much, like kind of what level of detail and everything is expected in that section.
Great question. We leave it open to you. So we generally don't give a lot of guidelines because, again, we want you to be able to create that in a way that you feel comfortable sharing more about yourself. So I've had people who have written it like a CD. I've had people who have done different sections. So they've done education, their educational background, their work experience, their volunteer or extracurriculars, and then anything else that they might want to add down at the bottom. I've had people, again, who have done it, blocked it in that manner, and then maybe done a quick summarization underneath each. So for example, here's my employment. Please make sure for all of those types of things you include dates, because again, that allows us to sort of position you and give us an idea of how recent this experience is, or how long ago it was, that type of thing. But so they might have done education and then underneath done a couple of sentences. Here's the skills, here's the skill sets that I'm coming with from this experience, these work experiences. Here's the, and again, here's perhaps your work experiences tie into why law, right? So again, you could do it that way. I don't like to tie people's hands too much by saying this is exactly how I want you to do it, because again, I'm asking for it to be a reflection of the true you, who you are. But now, having said that, please don't give me 20 pages of bullet points, because we're reading a lot of applications. So the point here is you want to be able to share what you'd like to share with the committee in a way that is, we're not going to have to dig too deep for that information, right? The minute we have to start digging and trying to figure out what you're trying to tell us, your application loses strength, right? So the ones that are, I think, and the students can speak up here, is I think the ones that are, from my perspective, that are the strongest are the ones that can tell us that and get right to the point. It's right there and it's right in our faces. We don't have to dig too deep to try and answer those questions. I don't know, you guys, do you have anything that you want to say?
I don't know if this would help, but I remember mine and it was entirely bullet points. I didn't add any detail at all. It was just like 8 or 9 bullet points and that's it.
I will say, from having been on the committee and also just I think who I am as a person, I find it really frustrating when people don't put dates associated. Like if you're listing, for instance, that you did this, or like you're in like a play, or that you volunteered, if people don't put the date, that I just find it frustrating. So I'm like, oh, did you do that like 2 years ago, or did you do that when you were like 10? And so like I find it useful when people like put dates there. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback on that.
Okay, thanks, thanks everyone. I think we'll move on to a couple of questions in the chat. One of them is from Jennifer, and the question is, how many individuals are admitted based on GPA and LSAT? So I think, Jennifer, are you referring to the presumptive offers?
Good question. I don't have that information at my fingertips. We admit a class of 110. It's rolling admissions. I can tell you that this past year was an exceptional year in that we had a lot of applicants with really high LSAT scores and really high GPAs. So, you know, I'm encouraging people this year, if you're applying this year, please get your application in early, because I only have 110 seats. And once those seats are full, there's not much I can do. So you know, if you're applying this year, please aim to get your application in October, November-ish. Do not leave it until January. We really tried this year to really balance it. So I know all of the committees, and again, I invite, you know, Rebecca, both Rebecca's and Natalie to jump in here. We really tried to, we're really looking for a balance, like I say. So we wanted a mix of students in this class. So we were very cognizant of all of our categories, the Indigenous category, the discretionary category, and the regular category in the JD. The JID only accepts 25. So again, we were really, really taking good care to really look at everybody's application and give everybody as much of an opportunity to be seen by the eyes of all of the committee members and have an appropriate decision. I know that's not exact. I wish I could give you exact. I just don't have those numbers at my fingertips right now. Sorry. Do you guys want to say, does that anything?
I would just add, if you're like one of those really great people who has like a really high LSAT and a really high GPA, don't just like bank on that. Really also work on submitting like a quality personal statement and a quality Part B.
Thank you.
I just want to jump in and say that it's really hard when you're reviewing applications to get to know someone from only paper. So all we have are your statements, your Part A, your Part B, and if you're submitting an additional statement with the JD/JID application or discretionary application, and then your transcript. So just really make sure that you put down what you want us to know about you. And especially with the statement, if there are any questions kind of left, like we're not really sure why UVic, why law, you know, what you really stand for, it's kind of hard to assess the application. And especially because we're looking at so many applicants, it does help if you can kind of communicate that as clearly as possible. So it's important to think about the overall narrative that you're sharing with us in all aspects of your application.
Okay,
Really great.
Oh, sorry, Laurie.
Sorry, really great feedback. I just wanted to say, I think it's really important. I guess the message I want to leave that question with is, yes, your LSAT and your GPA is very important and it's a big piece of the application. The personal statement, however, for all doesn't matter, like Rebecca said, doesn't matter whether you're one of those really high flyers. That personal statement is important. So I have seen people, you know, I mean, we're looking at you as a person and your ability to be successful in law school. So I guess, you know, having an outstanding GPA and LSAT is not necessarily going to guarantee you a seat.
Okay, I'm going to do one more chat question, then we'll go on to Tabitha's question. So thank you for your patience, Tabitha. I'm asking these ones because these are ones that we get all the time. So I'm guessing maybe some people in this session are wondering too. So this question is from Chelsea and it says, do you consider grades earned after graduation? I graduated with a 4-year degree and then returned for a 5th year full-time to boost my GPA. So how do we, what do we look at when we're calculating GPAs?
So when I'm calculating GPAs, if you have completed courses after you have your degree has been conferred, the only ones that I will include in your GPA calculations are those at the 300 or 400 level. So if you've gone back to school and taken 100 or 200 level courses, I am not going to be looking at those or calculating those in your GPA. Only 300 or 400 level post-baccalaureate will I consider and calculating your GPA.
Okay, Tabitha.
I was wondering if you accommodate in the admissions process. So for example, I'm a mature student and I graduated 20 years ago. So I don't have an academic reference. I actually tried to find my professors from my transcripts and I couldn't find them. Do you accommodate for mature students for the process?
Are you coming in the discretionary or the regular?
In the discretionary, for multiple reasons. So not only mature student, there's several other reasons.
Yep.
But that would be the reason why I could not have an academic reference. So
Okay.
I have references, but they would be a professional and a volunteer reference.
So what you need, a couple of things is I would include a note with your application as to why you are not including an academic reference. And that should include the fact that you've tried to reach out to several, perhaps they're retired, perhaps, you just have no way of getting in touch with them, but the committee is going to want to see that you have actively made an effort to get in touch with some academic reference. If you do not have, are unable to provide an academic reference, then one of those references, you need to identify that they are going to be acting as your academic reference, and then they have to write that reference in a way that an academic reference would write it. So it can't come in, you got to be careful that we don't get 2 character references, right? So for example, if it's your boss, let's say, who's writing you've identified as the individual to write your academic reference, then we're going to be looking at your critical thinking, your problem solving skills, your written oral communication, academic pieces. I'll pass it over to Rebecca and the 2 Rebeccas and Navneet here to help me because my mind's just gone completely blank. But we're looking for your academic ability. So you have to identify that this is the person that's going to be your academic reference. This is why you chose this person to be your academic reference. And then they must write the reference so it addresses your academic ability, because we need to determine and we need to ensure that you are academically prepared for the rigor of law school, and that you are going to be successful, or you have the potential to be successful in law school.
Yeah, could I submit 3 letters? Like, could I be accommodated to submit 3? Like one could be that person with the academic, one is a professional, and then one is a volunteer.
You could, but again, they're probably only, they ask for 2, they're probably only going to look at 2.
Okay.
So again, pick who's going to be your strongest, who's going to write the strongest references.
Right.
And which ones, here's the strategic again, which ones are going to support your overall application to UVic Law.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Do you guys have anything to say about an academic reference?
I guess since you're applying under discretionary, I can give you a specific example where I remember an application that we looked at recently, and it was in a similar situation where this person had not been in school since the late 90s or the early 2000s, I believe, and did not have an academic reference, but the rest of their application, I think not just the reference letters, but also the discretionary statement, focused on what they'd been doing in the years that they've left school. And like Lori said, one of the things that we're looking at is your ability to succeed in law school. And so even if you haven't actually been in school for a long time, if we look at your other experiences and it's just as challenging or invigorating as school would be, then that reassures us that you, even though you haven't actually been in a formal lecture hall, you can still succeed when placed in one. And so yeah, I don't think there was an academic reference for that person, but they will provide other references that spoke to, again, their character and work effort and ethic and all of that, that helped us as a subcommittee make a decision on this person, and we proceeded from there. So if that helps at all, I hope it did. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have some questions popping up in the chat, Lori, that maybe we can talk about around the difference between the regular and the discretionary category, like just a little bit of confusion around there. I also want to say to just preface it that we will be having an info session on the discretionary category as well. So if you think that is what you will be applying under and that suits your situation, then please check that out too. I'll post the link in the chat, but yeah, Lori, that some of the questions were around if you apply for the regular category or to the discretionary, is your application interchangeable? And do people that are admitted under the discretionary category go to the same classes with regular, and just how does that all work? What's the difference? And if anybody, if I'm not wording that the way that you're all asking in the chat, then please chime in.
So sorry, okay, I got distracted there. I was looking at the chat. What was the first question?
Are your applications for regular and discretionary interchangeable?
Oh, okay. Good question. So what will happen is if I'm reviewing if you apply within the regular category and I'm reviewing your application and I think you may be a better fit with the discretionary, then I may, depending on what time and where I'm at in the evaluation process, contact you and give you the option to switch to the discretionary category. This is a little bit of a conversation that we're going to have at the admissions committee this year around how and when are we going to be, and are we even going to be moving applications back and forth. For my gut right now is to say probably not. So it's really important for you to look at those categories and determine which is the best fit for you. So if the JAD regular is a good fit for you, then come in through that one, absolutely. If you meet the criteria as I've outlined in the discretionary category, then I would strongly encourage you to apply within that category. Whichever one you choose to apply in, give your application your full attention and give it your best. The authenticity, vulnerability, and strategic piece, I just can't, say that enough. It doesn't matter whether you're applying to the JD program or the JD JID, or if you're applying to the discretionary, the regular, or the Indigenous category. Whichever you choose, give it your absolute best. I can also tell you that we have one admissions committee with 3 subcommittees. Sorry, I have to think about this for a minute. We have 3 subcommittees. So we have a discretionary committee. We have a JD, it's a JD Indigenous and discretionary committee. We have a JD regular committee, and we have a JD JID committee. So we have faculty and students that sit on each of those. They're not interchangeable. So what happens in the discretionary committee stays in the discretionary committee, and so on with each of the committees. When you walk through those doors in September into law school, it does not matter whether you came in through discretionary, whether you came in through Indigenous, whether you came in through JD regular, or whether you're coming into the JD JID program. You are a 1L UVic student. There is, you are the same as You're part of that 1L class. What we are trying to do at UVic Law is trying to reduce barriers that people have experienced in order to allow everyone an opportunity to pursue law. So, I mean, for me, I haven't experienced a whole lot of barriers. So it may be, so my path to law school may be easier than other people who have experienced some significant barriers. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to level that path to give everybody, because we believe that the law should be available to everybody. And that's what we're trying to do with those different categories. That's the only reason that we have those different categories.
And Jennifer is asking if you're able to speak about the numbers for the regular and discretionary categories in the last few years. And Tabitha, I see your hand is still up. Okay, so Daisy, you can go after this, but Lori, the question was, are you able to speak about the numbers for the regular and discretionary categories in the last few years?
Are you talking about how many applied to each?
Jennifer, maybe you can clarify that if you don't mind hopping on for a sec here.
Yes, yeah, exactly. If there's a number, or even like, is it a percentage? Like, is it 90% is in one category and the other, or is it 50-50? Just wondering.
Oh, good question. I hate math. I hate percentages. I usually have about 13 seats in the discretionary category. And I have, I think, 10 seats in the Indigenous. Those can move a little bit. So this year we admitted a few more than that in the discretionary category. So that's sort of a goal, that's sort of an aim. If we get really outstanding, we can go a little bit beyond those numbers. So for example, I had 174 people applying in the discretionary category for, I think we had 15 seats this year.
And I think just to clarify, I don't know if anybody has this thought running through their head, but when we say the Indigenous seats, this is for the JD program. So there's the JID program and there's the JD program. We also hold seats in the JD program for Indigenous students. And again, that's about, as Lori mentioned, accessibility and pathways to law school. Daisy, did you want to ask your question?
Yes, of course. My question actually has a little bit more to do with trying to discern, I think, the discretionary versus the general category, because I think one of my biggest concerns was if my reasons for applying to the discretionary category are not necessarily medical. Let's say, for example, in the last year of my schooling, even though I had the intention and I had been going strong with graduating with a certain GPA, say more like an A- GPA, but I had some difficulty that gave me a lot of hiccups, but that bumped me into a B+ graduating because of the difficulty I had to face my last year. Is that reason enough to apply to this discretionary category? Because I'm getting the understanding that with the general category, grades and the LSAT scores seem to be a strong area that is used to assess their entry into law school, versus with the discretionary, you take a bit more of everything else that they're adding to explain why maybe it may not seem as strong in the academic portion, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, it's
wrong.
It's a tricky, so that's a little bit of a tricky one, because GPA and LSAT, yes, is important. But again, I do really want to stress that it's not the end all be all. Your personal statement, that overall application is really important for the JD regular for each and every category. If you are, let's say, hypothetically, running, an A average for your first 3 years, and then you drop to a B average in your final year, due to extenuating circumstances, and your LSAT, let's say, is 160 or higher, then I might suggest that you might want to consider the regular category, but in your personal statement, make sure that you address what happened in that last year. What impacted that GPA? And then what have you done about it? So this is similar to the discretionary, and I don't want to go too much into the discretionary here, but what I would be looking for in a situation like that, Daisy, is, you know, here I am, I'm rocking, I've got a straight A average, and then let's say, I'm just going to hypothetically give an example, say my mother passed away, and my mother, who I was extraordinarily close to, passed away suddenly, and I just, it kicked my feet out right out from underneath me. You know, I thought that I could finish. I was close to finishing. I thought that I could do it, but I couldn't maintain that. I couldn't maintain that A average because, you know, I was dealing with my own grief and loss, supporting my family at the same time. You know, that type of thing is what we would be looking for. And so, and then in addition to that, what's different now? So perhaps it's been several years. I'm in a different place now. I feel much stronger. I've gone to grief counseling, and I've got lots of support around me. And I feel like now is I can come in and I can really kick that loss. Does that make sense?
I have a quick question about that last portion. So would you say that if, say, that person, this particular hypothetical applicant, would you say that supplementing their application with, say, some records or some form of like statement from their counselors stating that this person attended this level of counseling during this time to actually support the fact that this was not just a made up type of grief, to, like, you know, because I'm trying to say this because you don't know this person except on paper, right? And so I'm thinking that, you know, you would need some, I don't want to say evidence because it's not right to ask someone for evidence of their grief, but would it be okay if that applicant, if they were okay sharing supplemental evidence of, say, they had to attend counseling and this is all they've been doing to really show that they are in a better place, and not necessarily a statement from the counselor saying something about where they're at, just the fact that they attended all of these things as a way of working towards being in a better place and being mentally strong to, like, commit to law school, if you get what I mean. Can they do that if they want?
Yeah, fabulous question. Yes, you can. Which brings up a fabulous point in that should you choose to do that, I would encourage you to do it in a way that just shares enough information with the committee. I personally have found that a lot of applicants will share a lot of personal information that probably is not necessary to get their point across. And it can sometimes, it's more a protection of your personal privacy. So it's finding that fine line between how much you need to share and how much might be just more than the committee really needs to know. So if, for example, if it was a counselor's note, I might say that, you know, something generic like Daisy, Daisy lost her mother, you know, in this year, she's been attending counseling and support. And I feel that she's in a really good, you know, or has been attending for this period of time. And I feel that she is in a very strong place to engage with the rigor of law school at this point in time. Right? Like we don't need all the nitty gritty details. Do you, Rebecca, Navneet and Rebecca, do you guys want to jump in on that?
I can. I completely agree. I think, especially when there isn't necessarily like a page limit for supplemental documentation, when you're reading someone's application, you can kind of get lost in the weeds. So it's also kind of making sure everything's more focused, but also, just as what Lori was saying, it's not necessary for the committee to see everything. So if you can have something that's more generic, kind of an explanation, that would be helpful. And yeah, so just as an example, we got like some records that were not relevant at all, like tax records, things like that. Like the committee doesn't we don't need that information. That's not really helpful to us. We just want to make sure that it's part of like your narrative, and whether or not law school is the right step for you kind of moving forward, because it can be very difficult. And there are some supports in place, but there aren't a lot, depending on stress and things like that, just because the accommodations at school can't accommodate for everything. But there are being efforts made, and we do have some supports in place, specifically in the law faculty. And so I would say you can connect with people. So Ruth is a good one. Zubeda is also a cultural support person, and getting in touch with Lori if you have any concerns, you can speak to them. You can also kind of connect with current students. There's a way to do that as well. So if you'd like to reach out to Lori and kind of see who you can speak to in terms of their experience and what's available, then I would suggest that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I'm just going to follow up. Sorry, you guys, I jumped in there. Really important piece that a lot of students don't think about is we do have supports, I shouldn't say a lot, we do have supports within the faculty and at the university, but it's even more important that you have outside supports for law school. Really, really important that before you enter into this, that you have a strong support system outside as well. Sorry, I can't be quiet now. Go ahead, Natalie, Rebecca, you wanted to.
I was just going to add, so what Rebecca's talking about is the discretionary category. If you apply in the regular category, but you think that like there's something that's happened over the course of your degree that you want to explain, feel free to do that. Like you don't need to show us some kind of like multi-page document explaining what's happened to you. Like I think people on the committee are very reasonable. Like we understand that like so many things happen over the course of an academic career, like outside of your career academically, like there's lots of stuff that happens in the life. And so the committee is very sympathetic to that. And you don't feel like you need to like prove to us that you've like had some like massive trauma. Like we will take you at your word. So yeah.
Okay, I think we'll move on to Jaden's question then. And again, if you feel like you want to talk about anything in depth, just shoot us an email.
I was just wondering in regards to like the pandemic and everything, are you guys looking at anything differently? Like just because for my undergrad, half of it was in person, and then the pandemic hit, and then I finished it in like online for like 2 years. So are you guys, is it still like the pass or fail classes, were those, how are you guys considering those, and just wondering about that?
Are you talking like the COVID grades?
Yeah, because I know like I was at UVic, and they gave for just that one semester, I think it was, you could pick the pass or fail, and I'm just wondering like how those are going to be considered into the GPA. And then also like, will you look at, okay, this person did 2 years online and then 2 years in person, like will you kind of weigh the in-person grades more, or is it all still like equal?
So it's all still equal. For the COVID grades, they will be treated like a pass. They will be treated, as long as you didn't get a fail in the course, they will be treated like a pass. So what that means is the units that you completed will count towards your overall units. So, your 60 or your 45 or your 60 units, but they will not be calculated into your GPA unless you received a failing grade. If you received a failing grade, then I will calculate that into your overall GPA. But otherwise, no, they will just be a pass, and they will not be calculated in.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's nothing else I can see in the chat right now, unless somebody wants to add anything in there or jump in with a question, put your hand up or just unmute.
And I would, before you do, I see we've got about 5 minutes left here. I would invite you to take a look at the other webinars that we're offering. We are doing one on the discretionary category. We are doing one on the JD program. We're doing one on the JD Indigenous as well. And I have faculty and students who will be joining me at all of those. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, to do that. And then the other thing I would say is, I know I said October, November to get your application in. Don't go and rush it now, right? Like I don't want people to panic and go rush it. What I want you to do is really think about that personal statement, really think about that why law. I mean, that's a really, I can't stress enough, a key piece, why law. And if you're having some challenges nailing that down, I actually suggest to people that you do a mind map. Is everybody familiar with mind map? Yeah, I'm gonna go, okay. But do a timed mind map. So in the circle in the middle, put why law, and then hit your timer and just go, just write, just type, just do however you're doing it. And when that timer goes off, you lift your hands off the keyboard or away from the paper, get up and actually walk away. And then come back and take a look at what you've written. And the reason that I suggest this is if you guys are anything like me, you're going to edit as you write, right? So you could be typing and going, why law? Okay, no, that's a stupid idea. No, that's not what they're going to want to hear. No, that's. If you do a timed mind map, you're actually coming from your heart, not your head. The editor in your head doesn't have time to step in there. You're actually going to be writing from your heart, and you may be surprised at what lands on that. Okay, I'm aging myself. Lands on that piece of paper, or on your computer screen, or on your tablet, whatever you're doing. That could be your first starting point as to why law. So my message that I want to leave you with here is, don't write from your head. Wait until you've done your application and let that editor come in and you can start to look at it. Write your application from your heart, because that's what we're really interested in. So if you have questions, you've got 2 minutes right now to, and I would encourage you to ask the students. They're here, they're amazing, and they're a great resource.
I have a question actually more so about law school. I think this is based off on the fact that my very anxious mind has kind of like really gone on that hole of just trying to find out about students' experiences. But I wanted to understand, like, why is it that in law school, I've heard that there is this ranking thing about the way they grade students. I don't know what your experiences are, just like a quick overview of just like why that is, and if like you feel like your grades in law school like significantly affect your career and your future. That's too loaded, I'm sorry.
I can answer quickly. So UVic doesn't post grades of all the students. I know some law schools do or did, but UVic doesn't have like a thing where it's like, oh, Rebecca Smith got like a 60. Like it doesn't post that anywhere for other people to see. But I will say, if you want to, this is like many things down the road for you guys, like if you do want to participate in a formal recruit, your grades matter there, but that's like many steps ahead, so don't worry about that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, last chance to ask the students. Oh, there's a good one. Have you got it, Emma?
Yeah, Hannah wants to know, why did you choose UVic out of all the law schools in Canada for our 3 current students?
I can give that a shot, I guess. I think in particular there were 2 things that kind of stood out. First was the smaller class sizes. UVic does tend to have a smaller incoming class at 110 students than most law schools. And I did my undergrad at UBC, so it was more of a bigger school experience, and I wanted something explicitly smaller. Law, of course, it's very interesting. I love learning it, but it can be challenging at times. So I wanted that support that would come with smaller classes. And where the professors would know my name if I go to office hours, that sort of thing. And also, I heard great things about the collegiality among the students that go to the school. I've been looking at the chat and I see friendships are already being formed here, and that's very similar to what actually happens at UVic. Law can be, again, challenging and difficult at times, and there's a lot of type A personalities in the industry, but at UVic Law, especially among my friends and my peers, I feel like there's people who genuinely want me to succeed and will help me succeed. And that's really what I'm looking for compared to some of the other law schools across the country. I don't know if Rebecca, if you have a similar reason or any other reason why.
I'm just going to ask if either Rebecca is going to answer, if you could also tag on another question that came in, or Navaneeth, you can answer this too. Is there anything you wish you did differently when you were applying to UVic or composing your application?
Sorry, Nav, do you want to answer the second question?
I'm thinking about it. It's tough to say because I got in, so I'm not sure what I would have done differently. I feel like maybe for the part B, because Rebecca mentioned how it was annoying not having dates, which I was one of the people that did not have dates, so I could have done that to make things easier. But aside from that, I'm not sure what else I would have done.
Sure, so I can answer both questions. I'll start with the second question first. So I wish I had kind of spent more time on part B. I spent quite a lot of time on part A, and because I applied to the JD program, the connection to community statement. But then part B, I wasn't really sure. And so I think I wish I had contacted Lori back in the day to ask her for some clarification on what I should include. So I think it would have been helpful to kind of be more thoughtful about that. And then in terms of UVic Law, I came for the JD program. I wouldn't really be in law school if it was not going to be considering Indigenous legal orders. It's something that's really important to me. So it's not really helpful for the regular category, but I think Nav's reason, I was really intimidated by law school. And so kind of knowing that the student body was more supportive and collegial was really important, that it is a smaller size. I went to U of T, St. George campus for my undergrad, and didn't really enjoy kind of feeling lost in a sea of people. And so being able to kind of build those personal connections with my colleagues and knowing that I can rely on my fellow colleagues is really important to me. And that's a sense that I got I actually came to the law school before applying. So if you are interested in a tour, we can make that happen. If you want to talk to a student and just kind of see their experience, that's also possible, just to see if it's the right fit for you.
I put this in the chat, but I'll just say it aloud. One thing I wish I had done was get feedback on my application. I know it's like super nervy to like, you're like, I don't know, maybe you're not pouring out your heart, but you're like trying to explain why you want to do this thing that you've maybe dreamt of for a long time. And it can feel like very vulnerable to have someone else read it, but it's so useful to get that feedback from someone. Yeah, would recommend doing that. And also, so I applied to UVic twice, did not get in. So if you don't get in, I know you're like applying now and you're like very hopeful. But if you don't get in the first time, I would say one thing I did, which I found useful, was that I spoke to the person who was reading my application and I said, hi, how can I improve my application? And they were able to give me feedback. So if you don't get in, do seek feedback also.
Okay, it's Friday night at 6:30. I'm so impressed you guys stayed this long. This is awesome. So I think that's it for now. Check out our UVic Law admissions page for the rest of our webinars. Rebecca and Natalie are joining me on some other ones as well. So I invite you to join us again if you have any further questions. And hopefully I look forward to reading your application soon. And any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Emma or I as well. And we can connect you with the Law Student Society for if you want to talk to a student or go for a tour. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.